Hello and welcome to the Proptech Hot Seat on iPropertyRadio with myself, Carol Tallon, the show where we explore trends and technologies driving innovation across the built environment. This show is brought to you in partnership with Proptech Ireland, the hub for innovators, investors, and indeed for industry leaders. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Ed Tinsely, General Manager of Residently. Ed, you're very welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having us, Carol.
And residently, for people who aren't familiar with the offering across the UK, you might just take us through the I suppose the core offerings.
Sure. So we are a rental operating system that simplifies and modernizes the whole resident journey for property managers, institutional owners, and their renters. So what's sort of different about it is, we are purpose built for the BTR and institutionally owned private rental market, and we connect every interaction between their teams and their residents, streamlining workflows, automating repetitive tasks, and increasing performance of the assets.
When you talk about the rental system and looking to simplify and modernize, it kind of points to maybe a traditional sector that has not been simplistic. It's actually been quite complex and definitely not modern. So talk to me a little bit about maybe some of the pain points that this technology was designed to address.
Yeah, so I think there's a few different areas. One of the things that we see in the market is, operators typically are choosing between a range of point solutions in their software, or kind of a whole encompassing arrangement with one of the big property accounting providers that can give them sort of an all-in-one solution. And so, we took a step back and, basically are able to consolidate all of the interactions with renters from the point of inquiry all the way through to renewals. And fundamentally, both the operator and the renter wants to see the same thing. They want everything in one place. They want to have total transparency over the process. And so by sort of putting everything in one place, we can actually start to attack large cost centers for our partners. So, as a couple of examples, but not sort of limited to this, we help institutional operators bring a lot of their leasing in-house through a sort of turnkey solution. And remember, because we're only building for the institutional market, all of our tools are built around their needs. Most of the marketing solutions, if you go and buy them off the shelf, let's say you're an institutional operator, you want to do the marketing in-house, you might go out and buy marketing software that's typically designed for a high street agent, because that's kind of where the marketing journey sits in this part of the world. So we've built that exclusively around in-house teams that might be light on resource, that need a little extra help on automating pre-qualification and inquiries and scheduling viewings. And so we go very, very deep into these workflows. And so, we're able to help them seamlessly move off of agent relationships, and also then flex between, if they need to use them for overspill or in high season, that they can do so but still retain the same data structures and the same experience. And then the second sort of main challenge we address is, by bringing together different parts of the workflow, we can actually have a meaningful impact on reducing voids. So many of your audience may or may not know that up to 30% of voids are effectively, we call them the avoidable voids, caused by challenging administration around getting the renter's intent, and then sort of once you have their intent, coordinating with agents. Again, if you're dealing with a national portfolio and you have to be in a lot of different places, even getting access to the property to assess its condition, to get the pricing right and back on the market is really challenging. So because we have sort of both sides of the process, we have our app that sits in the palm of every renter's hands. We've got a 95% download rate because it's very deeply tied into the journey. And we have the marketing process. We can start to link those workflows together in a way that really proactively drives that end of tenancy process and reduces void. So I think the thing that I'd love to contrast is a lot of the systems that sit out there today are quite admin intensive. I think lots of people sort of describe them as glorified databases that really sort of aim to capture all of the interactions digitally, but don't necessarily drive sort of dynamic workflows and proactive actions that really help to deliver performance.
I think that's a really interesting one. Maybe the difference between technology that captures rather than kind of drives the workflow. So I want to return to that, but just maybe to pick up on something that you mentioned earlier. When we saw in the early days of Proptech solutions being proposed across the industry, everybody thought their one solution could solve the one biggest problem that real estate had. And actually, what we learned is there's no such thing. There are lots of problems, there are lots of complexities, and actually, I get very nervous when a prop tech company kind of positions themselves as an all-in-one solution. To me, integrations and a really robust tech stack are the only way a contemporary portfolio can manage if they really want to be seamless. Because if I'm wrong on that, please tell
No,
me.
I agree.
So talk to me about integrations. What can you integrate? Because I can see there that, it absolutely makes sense that you're not going broad, you're going very deep into one concentrated market, or you really have one concentrated buyer, although obviously knowing and catering to their users and their tenants and their residents. So I can see how you would be able to be very focused in your work streams, but there would still be a requirement to integrate with other systems.
Absolutely. So yeah, just I guess I think the sort of the being very broad, but on one asset type is a different
Hmm.
type of all-in-one than saying we can solve all the industry's problems, because those two things are very different. And I think, and we sort of touched on it before the call, but where you see someone saying, "Hey, I can fix all of these problems across all of these asset types." We sometimes get asked if we can provide sort of the commercial workflows, and the question I come back to him is like, is that the same customer? Is that the same experience? Those are someone renting an office space or renting a storefront for their retail business is just not in any dimension the same set of needs as someone who's living their life with their three kids and is renting a single family home and wherever. So I think that I look at us as actually specialized relative to a lot of the folks that we see. And then, I guess very specifically, we're not building or trying to rebuild, and this is touched on the integrations, the accounting layer of
Mm.
the equation, which is obviously the most important bit, which we completely understand. But we have put huge amount of time, energy, and effort into building toolkits that help to both transform and then run those integrations. So transform the data and then run those integrations with those third-party accounting systems. So we have a very strong relationship with MRI, who I'd like to call out as being the most open and connected of all of the large software operators in the space, and I think they sort of see the benefits of that for them and their clients. But we have internal tools that really help. When we see data that's maybe created on or has been historically created on another system, we all kind of are familiar with it. It's a lot of it's sort of at the subject or mercy of manual data entry. It tends to come out in funny formats with a lot of errors. These data sets haven't actually been designed to power experiences to end users, right? So we have a small team, but a dedicated team who basically build and maintain those integrations. And I think the other thing that you probably appreciate is it takes hands-on service to make it work too. So we have our customer operations and account management team who are really really on top of how we're working with our partners, monitor how those integrations are running and monitoring and sort of helping them, troubleshoot any issues. But yeah, I guess to answer your question, I think we are very specialized, and in our area, and then we have built a suite of in-house tools to basically deal with the integrations.
Very good. And when we look at maybe some of the prop tech over the past decade, focusing on the rental market, it was focusing on a very traditional rental market, whereas actually we've seen through I suppose the institutional investors that tends to be a very different offering. It's almost like it is a sector of its own essentially, but the role of the property managers within it has really changed alongside it. So the role of a property manager that's catering within an institutional investment fund would be very different to what an estate agent who's managing a couple of properties every month.
Absolutely.
So explain a little bit maybe about how that role has evolved and maybe that necessitated a different approach, a more streamlined approach.
Absolutely. I think there's some interesting background here. I think so. A lot of us come from an e-commerce environment before working on this project. So Tom Allison, who started Residently, a bunch of us were part of a business that we sold to eBay, building one of the first sort of international same day logistics networks. And we were at the time working with a lot of retailers, a while ago now, but so 12, 13 years ago, and they had this same challenge, which is historically they were, as retailers, used to, or been asked to manage their stores really efficiently. There was big long tail trucks and delivering to stores and getting stuff on the shelves and managing their inventory. And then pretty much overnight, they were asked to be a technology company and to run a completely different model and to do both those things at the same time. They still had to run their stores. They also had to basically be this new thing. And I think you see the same thing with property management. I think historically you had to manage the finance and accounting bit, and you had to manage compliance and maintenance. But that was broadly the core and the extent of it. And now you have to do all those things in a more complex environment. You've got more regulation, more challenges there, and then you also have to be a hospitality business. You have to learn how to sort of talk to consumers in a way that's maybe doesn't necessarily have high overlap with the compliance element of your business, and then at the same time you've got to be a technology business too. You're a data company. You've got to serve your clients up with real time insights and data from across these incredibly complex portfolios. So I think that's one of the things that attracted a lot of us to working on this is we'd seen that type of evolution before, and I don't think being able to, in retail, there was an existential element to it, i.e. literally the ones that didn't quickly adapt are all out of business. I think in obviously because of the supply and demand imbalance and a bunch of other things, I think it's not quite the same in our industry, but you can, I think, and something I believe deeply in my bones, you can see that the ones who do get it right will be able to drive higher yields and command a higher performance than the ones who don't and are slow to move.
Yeah, Ed, I tend to agree with you, and I'm really delighted that you touched on the hospitality side of it or the experiential side, because I think that's maybe one of the key differences as well over the past 10 to 15 years that we're seeing across the private rental market that maybe the traditional approach doesn't cater for. So, there might have previously been, obviously from point of inquiry to some level of pre-qualification. It didn't always happen right through to getting the tenancy in place. But beyond that, the focus once the tenant was in situ, the focus was very much on fault reporting, or
Yeah.
then the kind of the maintenance, the monthly accounting maintenance, whereas actually the hospitality, the experiential side of it, the community element, the social element, how can we actually break those down to see how important is that?
Yeah, well, I think one thing I would say is sort of a way to square this circle, right? Which is like much more demand on people's time and resource, and ostensibly for similar fees, is technology, right? You've got
Mm.
a huge amount of this stuff that should be automated. The I think one of our clients describes the non-value add work, the stuff that you just expected to get on with and do, which frees up time for managers to be more proactive, to add those higher value tasks to their customers, both the investors and also think through creative ways to help build your communities and put on great events and offers and stuff. So yeah, I guess if you sort of breaking it down, I think I think you probably agree from being around it. Effectively, compliance is number one, most important. You can't mess that up. That is a again the basics, and if you get that wrong, then there's no community. Yeah, I think you both second on the finance and accounts management again, because it's ultimately property manager's customer is the investor, and that is what they've been instructed to take on for them. And then I think when you get into, wouldn't really blur sort of community and those types of things. Sorry, I would really blur those into operational performance, because those things are not, I think often they're maybe cited as being sort of soft activities relative to the other stuff. But I think, when you think about your leasing journey and your leasing process, all of that to me is part of the same thing to the end customer. The end customer doesn't differentiate between the leasing experience and then the community events. It's all part of their interactions with the thing that they're buying. So I would sort of bucket all of that in together, and that's again one of the things that we've been very thoughtful about is the leasing journey and the what you deem to community aspects, things like move-in services and any other additional services that our property managers provide to their renters. It's all part of one seamless thing. You can't really sort of pull them apart. Again, historically, the industry has been very sort of, you've got your leasing and you've got your portal, and we're going to drive adoption of our portal once we've moved someone in, and like we completely blur all those concepts. So you can download the app when you're
Yeah.
submitting your offer, if you want, and that app changes state as you move through the different phases of the journey. But I think ultimately, I think you could extend this certainly to renewals, i.e., if I've got a good experience, I've got a good manager who's prompt in their responses, and has been really helpful in me settling in this community and putting on some great events and offers. That can all roll into, again, one of the things that rolls into whether someone renews or not. But I would say one of the hidden costs of sort of mismanaging the sort of the experience element is where you need something. This is a complex process. Stuff goes wrong by definition. We all know, and I think there's a difference between if you are not if you as a renter are not treated like a customer from the first interaction, and you kind of the feeling, right? Like you get given the fifth form that asks you for your name and all of that
Yeah.
stuff. It builds up kind of almost like a hidden resentment. So when something
Yeah.
does go wrong, you've got absolutely no margin.
Yeah.
And I think that's something again that you can't put a number on it, but it's really I think integral to maintaining those good relationships with renters is to be really thoughtful about what they're experiencing and to deliver that in a
Yeah.
neat.
And no, I understand what you're saying, as in the experience is the entire experience, and that you don't break it down. I suppose I'm always curious to know about maybe some of the key drivers, because I know you led with compliance there. Obviously, ESG is a huge driver, and social is a part of that. But maybe the piece that is not articulated in there is around the shift in expectations for consumers, the changing expectations of consumers. And I think that has been huge in driving some of our
Absolutely.
decisions. And that probably is mirrored very much with the proportion of their salary that they're paying on their rent. That tends to shape expectations fairly smart.
No, but again, I think yeah, we always talk about it as driven by you can order a pizza and a taxi in a few seconds, and you have this transparent
Yeah.
experience with that, and it's I don't know, €15,
Yeah.
£10. And then you get to the thing you're spending 40% of your income on, and it's like not at all like that. So,
Yeah.
the key to deliver, I mean, acknowledging that delivering a rental transaction is not the same as delivering a pizza. The key is actually making it almost feel like that. It's taking out, abstracting all the complexity that we see, and it's even more complex because you have multiple operators right across
Yeah.
this transaction, which is also something that we built our platform around. But the key is transparency, structuring lease types so that you know upfront what you can get, what you can't get, being really
Mm.
transparent about pricing. Those are the types of things that again have just existed, or the industry has kind of always not had huge amounts of transparency over that, just because of their operational
Mm.
structures, and it's kind of easier not to. It's been really, really deliberate about what is our offering,
Yeah.
how are we communicating at the earliest possible phase, how are we giving them transparent updates throughout the whole process. Those are the ingredients to meeting those expectations. And I think, we a lot of us who've been renters in the past have had exactly the same feeling. So hopefully, we're on the other
Yeah.
side of the change now.
Ed, if we had more time, I would definitely be challenging you on that. What they're spending 40% of their salary on, because quite frankly, the fact that people are, and I know they are spending up to 40% of their salary on the rental, tells me something is really broken in our housing market, full stop. So I think it's great to make the experience as good as it can be. It's also pointing to a bigger problem that I don't think any amount of amenities and good experiences will solve. But that feels like
That's,
a
that's
larger
another.
a larger conversation for another day, so I won't hit you with that. But I suppose before we finish up today, I'm particularly interested in something that you do focus on, which is maybe contrary to what we would understand in Ireland, across the institutional side of the private market, the private rental market, and that is single family homes. So would that be a significant portion of the holdings that your clients have?
It's certainly the fastest growing. So yeah, we've got about 6,000 plus single family homes on the platform now, which I think, depending on how you define it, the UK total is roughly 10,000 plus. And yeah, I think the sort of what we see in single family is quite interesting because, um, you know, ultimately, because of its nature of being quite dispersed geographically, you don't have operationally, it's a very different thing. You don't have an on-site concierge like you might in a multifamily building, following the sort of American model, the amenitized model. Technology is kind of your front desk. It is the very epicenter of your operations. So, making it easy to report issues, making it easy to manage your lease, making it easy to sort of build community with your neighbors. Those are all technology systems problems, and to some degree, again, existing systems that just serve the multifamily area, you can get away with quite a lot because actually what you're really building is kind of a concierge management tool, for the concierge to translate verbal requests into actions. But you can't run that sort of playbook if you've got, I don't know, 2,500 single family homes across 7 or 8 cities. And technology is a really key part of that, and also I think by definition, because of the geographic spread, you're more reliant on third parties, which from an institutional standpoint then raises the question: how do you get the data that you need and understand how your operations are performing? How do you understand how leasing's going? Again, if you've got only third party agents running the leasing process and giving you data back in lots of different formats, those are all really systems challenges. And I think the other thing, again, very specific to the UK market, but if you look at the rental housing stock, it's all single family. Like, we are used to living in that type of stock, that type of typology. Sorry.
Well, that's not unique to the UK at all. In fact, in Ireland, we would have that on an even more pronounced scale, which is causing a problem. So that's why I'm interested to see the approach.
Exactly, and then I think what excites me, we see a lot of and some of our customers like Brick Lane, home quarters by Essential Living, turning sort of undervalued existing stock into an institutional asset class. So effectively taking, we have which again another podcast, the sort of the private landlord market, leaving the market in droves, and so where does that sort of how does that supply get replaced? And we've got a string of our partners who are making making a really interesting fund and funds from that existing stock, but applying our software to deliver something that's sort of institutional grade.
That's really interesting because, again, private landlords leaving the market, that's something we're seeing in Ireland. However, I'm certainly not aware of any institutional funds coming in and buying up those types of homes. They're all going to the home buyer market, which obviously is solving one problem, but the reality is we need new supply across all types and tenures.
Absolutely.
But actually, where we're losing out the most is losing those single family homes that were in private rented. Once they go to the market, they tend to either go to an approved housing body or a local authority buying it up for social housing, or it goes to the private market. And by the way, need for both of those. So that's not a criticism. It's just a reflection of what's happening in the marketplace.
Yeah, need for all. And you could make the argument that the sort of institutional operators who are able to at scale refurbish and raise the environmental standards of a lot of these homes, is also a benefit and deliver a higher quality experience.
It would be a massive benefit, but I suppose it almost seems like a contradiction in terms to say to be able to do this at a single family homes at scale. It almost, so actually, will technology be enough when you're talking about disparate locations? Maybe, maybe not, but it's a really interesting one. I'm definitely going to do a little more digging into the the UK institutional model that's doing that, to see if that's something that could possibly apply in Ireland, or see if it is starting to happen in Ireland. I'm just not aware of it, but I do think it's really interesting. Ed, I'm conscious of time and I know we have to finish up, but I suppose finally, because I know that the company residently is 6 years in the marketplace. Is that right? 6 years?
Yes.
Yep. So like all good innovators, I would imagine you're using this 6 years of client problems to create a pipeline of innovation for new solutions. So what can we expect from the Residently team over the next year or two?
Yeah, so I think what I'm really excited about is we've kind of really nailed what I would consider our core infrastructure around all the leasing, communications, payments, all of that stuff is now relatively mature. So like a lot of, I think one of the like a lot of folks, we've got a new toolkit at our disposal with a lot of the large language models and artificial intelligence. And I think when you're looking at, okay, well, where can this help? Where can you apply it? This is when we come back to the sort of what are we doing here? By connecting all the different interactions and data sets with the renters, you ultimately need that in order to apply it operationally. So, if it's just analyzing contracts or doing something sort of in the back office, you can apply it to maybe an individual element of the business. But if you want it to help, take some of the more highly administrative back and forth that you might have around the leasing process with prospective renters, but give everyone a good answer. Having a sort of horizontal, broad view of here are all the maintenance challenges they've had. Here's the feedback they gave after they signed their contract, because we build feedback into the product. Those are basically key ingredients to even thinking about delivering on any of this stuff. So yeah, we're looking at a whole range of use cases around that, both from the basic stuff in communications to providing, and we're already providing sort of AI-led pricing insights around renewals and new leases that really help people to price more accurately when they're maybe not on the ground, as opposed to checking Rightmove. Those are just some of the sort of little applications that we're building on top of the platform that we've now got.
Sounds exciting, Ed. And I know right now you're operating across the UK. Can we expect to see residentially in the Irish marketplace anytime soon?
Well, hopefully, my whole family's from County Mayo, so it'd be very much easier for me to explain what I do.
Right. Well, look, there's one reason we're putting Ireland at the top of the list when you're looking at your export strategy. I love it. The family and friends is still a powerful way to drive, particularly startups and new technologies. So I wouldn't rule it out just yet, Ed. But listen, thank you so much for taking the time today. That's all we've time for. That was Ed Tinsely, General Manager of Residently. My thanks as always to producer Katie Tallon and to the audio team at Hear Me Roar Media. Before we go, a special word of thanks to our sponsor, Proptech Ireland, for supporting the podcast and for making these conversations possible. And also, thank you for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next episode of the Proptech Hot Seat. In the meantime, please be sure to check out all of the other Irish and international real estate and construction shows here on iPropertyRadio.com.